Hey everyone, Yan Zhao. Tonight, special guest, the master swag king, master of all multimedia platforms. He's everywhere.
Mm.
Comics, gaming. How's it going, man?
No, I'm going pretty good. Yeah, freaking jack of all trades and actually a master of all of them. That's what I tried not to be a master of none because, that would be like pointless to like have all these things that you like and you not mastered all of them. Because I was never under that mindset that you couldn't actually do it. It's just
Mhm, mhm.
just pace yourself out on like certain topics. Like some days I'll be this all like more manga focused. Some days I'm more like more game focused. Because I love this stuff. I love all of it. So the reality is, a lot of people think like, oh, I gotta focus on one thing. Well, I don't want to focus on one thing because like I like all of it. I have this like dilemma where I want more than one wife. Like this wife cooks better than this wife. This wife, drives the car better.
Hope she's not watching.
Good Lord. That also imply that I have a wife actually.
So how did you decide to get into sort of the biz? Everybody's got a story. A lot of people, they say, well, I want to make my own comics, or they just said, yeah, I was already playing games all night anyways. I figured I might as well just stream them. What made you decide to get into it?
Just YouTube in general. Oh, so there's like 3 layers to the story. Hopefully this won't be a full-blown therapy session, because then at that point you probably need to get paid for that. So let's see, as early as back as I can remember, I would go over to I met a friend at high school that I still know now. Actually, he's a trucker now. When I used to go to his house and we used to just play Yu-Gi-Oh cards, we used to just like duel or whatever. And his mom would actually have like Ben Shapiro on for TV. This was back in the days. This is so ghetto. Back in now you can hook up your TVs to like your monitors. You could put the stuff you're watching on the TV. Back then, remember how you had to get like this cord and hook it up to your tower just to put it into your TV lawn? Yeah, so that's how ghetto that was back in the day. So she would have like Ben Shapiro on, and I was like, that's kind of cool. He's able to just like talk how he wants to in a video, and people just listen. Like I thought that was kind of cool. And then in high school, I took a film production class, and I remember just going on YouTube, because I had been around since YouTube began. I remember when YouTube came to be a thing, and I remember just watching videos on YouTube, like music videos, but I never knew there were like actually people on there doing this kind of thing. So the first person I'd ever like legit subscribed to was this guy called Asian Eyes White Dragon, and he's still doing Yu-Gi-Oh content now, which is crazy. He's had his ups and downs. When you play like Yu-Gi-Oh or comics or any stuff, this stuff is like you don't even need sex. This stuff just basically fucks you every day, as everyone knows. So I thought what he was doing was super cool. I was like, I love Yu-Gi-Oh too. I want to talk about it like he does. And then I subscribed to a few like more people after that. And then my mom passed away back in 2015. It was like a month before like Age of Ultron came out, I remember. And I was just sitting there in my house, just like super depressed. I had always had like a job. I had already like was living with my brother at the time, and I just come home just like super depressed. And I was watching this other guy who's definitely not a content creator now because he's actually mentally insane. A guy called Sky Williams. He used to do like content for like Smash and League. Big old gay black guy. Yeah, holy crap. And he hit a video where he had mentioned like, oh, you want to do a YouTube channel? Just start a YouTube channel. And I was like, you know what? I'm doing it now. So I grabbed my ghetto Metro PCS phone, and I didn't have a stand. But this was before they actually made stands for these things. Because now you can buy stuff to hold your smartphone. This is back when like these kind of things were like 30, 40 bucks, and then they made like dollar versions on Amazon. So later on I bought like the dollar version, but I just put my phone up on this huge table, put it up beside me, and just started recording, actually.
Nice.
So that was in October of 2015. So, and it's been 9 years since I started this, actually. A lot of ups and downs, but I will say I probably learned more doing this like now than anything I've ever did ever, honestly. Because like when you learn how to do all this stuff, there's so much like nuance and technical stuff and a lot of perspectives, other people's perspectives kind of blend into that too. So yeah, that's the initial origin story of how I started doing this stuff.
Interesting. So yeah, one of the other ways I find that you learn a lot too is you talk with other people who are doing stuff online, and it's like, oh, I didn't know that. And like you get, even if you don't necessarily agree with them, like you get all sorts of different perspectives on things, and it makes
Mhm.
you think a bit.
Yeah. So like, man, I remember the way I used to interact with people was so cringe because I never really like interacted with people on that kind of level. Because in my personal life, I don't really like talk to a whole lot of people. It's
Mhm.
very like even when I was a bit younger, I would like have moments where I'd want to socialize, and then I had moments where I'm like, you know what, this is kind of overrated. I'm just gonna be doing my own things. But on the side, I would have like where I would like join like Facebook groups and other like little smaller groups on the internet and kind of see the way to get and interact with people. And oh my god, there if you looked at my interactions with people compared to like now, it'd be so night and day different. I was probably a full blown communist the way I was acting, actually. Like, you don't want to collab with me, you fucking bitch. Oh god, good lord.
Was it one of those things where, in real life, you just weren't able to meet up with people who shared similar interests, or, um,
Somewhat. I'm not. I can't, like. I've always told people this throughout the many years. If I don't synergize with someone very well, it's very hard for me to like understand that person because like
uh,
I personally feel like life is short. We're not on this planet for long. There's not a lot of time in the day, and I to myself in my personal life and on like I mean content creator persona, whatever you want to call it, a lot of people just don't have any good chemistry or synergy. I
mhm.
feel like that's just wasting someone's time, like I can understand meeting someone for the first time, having a conversation, and it just kind of go like whatever. But for me, if I'm gonna dedicate my time to something and someone, I'd actually personally feel like if we had like some genuine like synergy and connection, because I just feel like that just gets super boring. It's like when you go to the supermarket with like your wife or whatever. You know how you guys will see like a person you may know, and you don't really like this person that much. They don't really like you, and it's like, hey, how are you doing? How are the kids? They're like, oh yeah, it's cool, yeah. And then you kind of it's like it's terrible, So I didn't want that later on a part of like what I was doing because I just found that to be like that's just boring, like who wants
Yeah.
to talk to someone they have no chemistry with, or no actual no synergy, like you're not into each other's conversations, you're just kind of doing like, oh, how are your kids? Oh, I thought they were still in kindergarten. Oh, well, no, they're in college now. It's like always the same conversations, man.
Yeah, yeah, especially when it's, something like this where, when it's online, you sort of have to go out of your way to meet
Mhm,
these people anyways.
mhm.
The grocery store, well, you kinda bump into someone, there's nothing you could
Yeah.
do. But here, it's like, yeah, if you're gonna spend your time, you
Mhm.
you wanna make sure it's someone you at least get along with.
Yeah. And man, I think I've been through so many like different groups of people because like people I come from like the Yu-Gi-Oh community and people think there's communist bigot stuff going on. Oh my that all that like big giant battle. Oh my god. It is so much different in that compared to like what I'm at now. Cause I always thought to myself, man, the grass has to be greener on the other side. Cause it can't be this bad over there. Cause I thought over there was terrible. After a while, I just got so fed up with people. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go still talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! But I'm gonna talk about all sort of stuff that I like too. Oh no, it's probably even worse.
Mhm, mhm.
Maybe the grass isn't always greener on the other side, as I always say,
Yeah, it's kinda everywhere these days.
Yeah, and the other thing is there's much more creative freedom I have doing this now compared to before. And I mean, people are always gonna like, don't you want your channel to focus on one thing? I was like, it did before, and it did grow, and then I ended up losing it because YouTube reasons, obviously. But I can't tell you, man, how I would go to a movie, not just superhero ones. I've watched many movies throughout my entire life, movie theaters too, not just superhero ones, and just I couldn't talk about them, and I really wanted to, but I had a channel that was dedicated towards playing this card game, and I don't like regret doing it. It paid off pretty well. I met so many great people through it, and it brought me to what I'm doing now. But like, I felt so bad that I couldn't talk about this awesome thing when I just saw it because I didn't have the channel presence for that. Because everyone kept telling me, "Oh, your channel has to do one thing. You do this other thing, it's gonna ruin you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I guess."
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of people say that, and I think it depends on what you're looking for, Like, if you're looking to become a full-time content creator, then I think maybe that kinda works. Like, you've got your one niche, and then, you see people even, like, in the comics industry, there's certain people, who should remain nameless, where I think, like, their main job has become YouTuber, and, like, making the comics is kinda like their swag.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of like the other thing that comes in the comic book industry. So like people don't know. Okay, my comic history is weird. So we don't have it. We never had a comic shop here growing up, right?
Mhm.
So I had ended up getting Spider-Man comics because my mom had a newspaper subscription. Yeah, that's how I'm a little old at this point. I'm on a newspaper subscription. We got Spider-Man comics through that. Great stories. I mean, I still have flat. We lost him in a house fire, but
Oh.
still have great memories of getting those every Friday, just having an absolute blast. I remember the one where it's the cover where he's kicking Electro after Electro beat him up the first time. They're like these like part 2, part 1 things that are going with characters. This is back when Tobey Maguire had his trilogy going on. It's back when I think
Mhm.
Spider-Man 3 dropped, actually. So I think, and I also had that, you remember that little black Marvel encyclopedia where it detailed all of his villains after the Clone Saga?
Oh,
That
yeah.
was like my very first ever. I was like, I love Spider-Man, and now I have a book telling me about all his villains I didn't even know. I was like, who is I didn't back then I didn't know J. Jonah Jameson's kid was like Wolfman or whatever. I didn't know he had a clone. I was like, who's Ben Riley? So like all these villains, and I was like, this is cool. And then I went to the library back when I was like 6th grade. They had a giant one, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. So after that, I didn't really actually own a legit floppy until 2016 DC Rebirth. Because in the midst of that, I always had manga. So I had Shonen
Mhm.
Jump magazines every month until they stopped that and went digital. So I got a mixture of it was mostly just Spider-Man and then just manga for the most part. And then so the way I would learn about superheroes was basically remember back I used to buy phones, like buy minutes for phones. We had
Yeah,
to
yeah.
buy minutes for a phone to have internet. So I would literally type up Batman, read his comic history from start to finish, up until all those stories. I don't remember all at this point now. It's so many years. So I did a lot of characters, ones that I was really interested in, power sets, everything. So that's how I came to learn about most of the characters, actually. So I'd go to school and I'd be like, oh my goodness, New 52 story just dropped. Okay, gotta scroll down and gotta see what happened. I had to. I didn't want to be, I don't now it's mean like that people do that, but I had to. I had no money. We were poor. I'll buy a comic book. I barely had $10 to my name, actually. But when I got a job, I made sure that I bought stuff to make up for that, you know.
Sure. I mean, I don't really have that much of a problem if people don't have that much money, and okay, you got to go read the wiki about it or something. It doesn't bother me, because most people in the US, they tend to move up in income, especially as they get older.
Yeah. Yeah.
So eventually they'll be in your target audience, and they'll want.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I always wanted to buy the stories. I just had no money, so I'd watch like Comics Explained. That I had
Mhm.
him. I'd watch him. I feel the people. I never watched Comic Story, and I thought Comics Explained just did it better, honestly.
Yeah.
Then I had so that was pretty much how I got into like just getting physical media for comic books. And I remember DC had like these 3 packs. I would buy them, and I was like, oh god, those are looking back now. They were ripping people off. Tom King Batman stories for $10. Oh lord. And I remember I didn't know comics had structure because, like, to be fair, it's still kind of true. They really don't. So, like, I would go to like this place called Frankensons,
Mhm.
and instead of like buying runs in order, I would just show me the Nightwing section, and I just start grabbing a bunch of random ones. I don't know where this stuff ties into. I just only grabbed it just because it started grabbing random shit. I did it for like Flash, Batman. Oh my god, that was now I would say that's a mistake, but if you're trying to save money, then you probably shouldn't do that. But then let's see. After that, I had a few floppies that I now still currently get, but for the most part now I get like trade paperbacks and omnibuses. Like so, Iron Man is one
Mhm.
I like Iron Man a lot, actually. So for him, I think it was 2022. I was like, you know what? I want to read some more Iron Man stories, the ones that I haven't read. Oh my god, I had the same mistake. I forgot to read the fine print of like where this one starts. So I think I bought like a 5th trade paperback before a first one. I was like, oh my god, man. So I finally mastered it. I finally got it down. Okay, you gotta buy this first before you buy the other ones. Because as everyone knows, you don't want to be reading like volume 5 of a trade paperback. If you haven't read volume 1, you're like, where does all this start? So now I make sure it's like it's gotta be at the beginning of something. It's at
Mhm.
the beginning, then I can get it now. But yeah, for anyone who hasn't been book collecting, if you want to save money, just get an omnibus. If there's a big story out
Yeah.
there, but people are gonna probably ask like, isn't that like $100? Well, you just go on eBay. They're like 80. People are very very
Yeah.
fair with them
That
because
or
if In the long term, if you try and get those in back issues, well, if you don't have a store around you like I didn't, an omnibus is better because you can just get on right then and there, and it saves you money because you don't have to go and pay like $10, $15 for each issue potentially. Or if you want to get the trade paperbacks, some stories have like 9, 10 paperbacks. Like that's going to cost like $10 each almost, and plus tax. Just get an omnibus then. You have the story right there, and a few extra they go and come with it too. Honestly, that's what I say for anyone collecting stuff that's new. Because there's a lot of people that are like, "Where do I start?" It's like, well, depends on how much money you got. So.
Yeah. Also, there's a lot of good overstock stores. Like, I don't know if they have the store chain Ollie's around you, but they always
I
have.
wish. I so wish we had that. Holy crap! My town sucks, dude.
Oh no. But there's a lot of that kind of stuff. But I was kind of wondering, what do you think about? So I'm old, and when I was a kid, there were comic books in every gas station, grocery store, bookstore. Like you almost couldn't avoid them. They were going to be around somewhere, newsstand, whatever. And then now they're not really anywhere. And then the other thing is the price, right? Like when I was a kid and I first started collecting, it was 75 cents for a comic. And then candy bars or a Coke was only 25 cents. So for $1, I could have a book and like a snack or a drink or something. Now, if you wanted to get a comic and like a candy bar, you'd have to have $10 at least. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of wondering, do you see a lot of future in Western comics? Being so expensive relative to, an entertainment budget, or, and also that you almost have to go to a comic book store in order to get this stuff, whereas it used to be everywhere.
Okay, so let's try and tackle it two ways. So the first thing, I think people are somewhat disingenuous about how they spend their money, because I think how you live life, and instead of you talk to people and what they're trying to say, but they don't want to say because they want to sound like an asshole. So I think people do want to spend money on this stuff. I think they genuinely do. But the problem with that is people have come to notice that there's a lot of bad stories within these books. Yep. And the reason why people know that now is because of the internet, YouTube, Twitch, Rumble, wherever you consume your content. People are talking about how bad these stories are. So I think more people are hesitant on spending money on the newest stuff because of how much they know now compared to what they know then. Like back in the day, as you said, you had to buy that issue to actually know if it was bad. You didn't have like what we have here where someone would be like, hey, this is my opinion of this. You could buy your own, just, what was that saying back in the day? Buy at your own risk or whatever, Yeah. Exactly. So now you have people that are hesitant on buying this stuff that probably have the money, because you see use Ultimate Spider-Man #1, for example, right? Or the new G.I. Joe line, Transformer Life with Skybound. People buy it. Or at least use Skybound, for example, because, Marvel could be hit and miss, mostly miss. The Transformers G.I. Joe Entertainment one right now, people are buying it. I was going on eBay yesterday, and I bought Duke issue #1. So I'm not really that big a G.I. Joe fan. I was like, I'll start here. It's selling. These books sell to people. It's shown these are something people are buying. So depending on word of mouth, because word of mouth really matters now, that'll dictate whether people are buying something. Ultimate Spider-Man #1 is a good example of it. People just kind of want a Peter Parker to have the happily ever after with kids, and it showed. The sales are there. People want to buy it. I think it's a combination of people do want to buy, but it's like no one wants to buy a story. Be lectured to have a story where the hero's not acting like the hero. No one wants that. Because that's the thing is, if you're already on a budget and you're selective about how you spend your money, you want to make sure you're making a good purchase. A lot of people are going through it right now, potentially. I'm not saying I know everyone's situation, but you want to make sure the money you're spending is something that's going to last you for a bit of time. The department store question you asked. So the only person that I see doing it is Tom McFarlane with his page punchers. Do you know what a page puncher is?
No.
So if you go to your local Walmart or Target, you have them on Amazon too, or his own store. These page punchers have little miniature toys, and they have a comic book corresponding with the toy itself. So he has them for Batman, Superman, Nightwing, Batman Beyond, Aquaman, because he has the DC line deal with Hasbro. So he's the only guy that I've seen where he's actually putting books in stores big box retailers like Walmart, Targets matter because that's where a lot of people do their shopping at. So the kids will see them, they can buy them because they're not a lot of money. I have them. I like them a lot. Their package really cool, and they're only $10. The same thing you'd be buying for manga, actually. He's the only guy I see doing it. And it's crazy because he just can't be the only guy doing that. That's the thing is if someone, because he's getting, first of all, if a lot of people know he's doing that good thing, he's going to get all the money though. It's only a matter of time before like more people catch on to that. He's going to get literally, if he keeps doing that, he's going to get all the money. He has a Transformers line coming out very soon with Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, and Starscream. So I also think, because it's another thing in there, because comics, there's so many layers of stuff, man. Oh my God, I hate this industry sometimes. Oh my God. So I think the other disposable income, as you would know, goes to manga, because manga is $10 for 160 pages.
Yeah.
The typical floppy is like 24, 28, give or take which character you're buying, right? I think people are legitimately just saving up their extra money to buy that manga book, because that manga book is going to have like 5 chapters compared to the 24 pages you get in that. So I think it's people just being selective and a lot more reserved with what their money is, because you see it on like Kickstarters and Indiegogos. When people see something that they really think is going to be good, they'll throw money at it. It's not like people don't want to. It's just gone are the days of people just throwing money willy-nilly out there to a bunch of crap. Because at this point now the MCU is starting to feel that, hey, they're not going to eat up our crap anymore, and it's going to just give us all their money.
Yeah. I do think the money is a large part of the problem. So like I was saying before, back in the day, $1 would get me a comic in a candy bar.
Yeah.
Well, also cable at that time was like $35 a month. So that means if you said, well, I don't like cable TV, I like comics instead, you can get 35 comics in that month or more.
The dollar you spent back then goes way more than it does now. $1 now is worthless, almost essentially.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, now if you're already paying like $6 or something for an issue, you can get maybe 2 or 3 issues before you hit the same price as Netflix.
Right. Yes.
So I think the comics used to be like cheap, disposable type of entertainment, and they've tried to go to a more prestige version. I think a lot of that really started in the 90s, like with the Image guys and stuff. They said, oh, well, we need to be on better paper. We need to have better colors and this and that. And I think that, everyone like decided, oh, well, we're going to take the top end of the market. But then, the problem is it kind of moved away from the audience that was mass entertainment. But what do you think about books for kids? Because that's another thing I've noticed in the market too. Like when I was a kid, there was always kids books like Mickey Mouse and Archie, and even like Spider Ham and stuff like that. They were there for the kids. And then there was also, that's when you started to get like Vertigo, and you started to get stuff for adults, whereas there really hadn't been any of that before. Whereas now it seems like they've cut out the bottom market. So there's no books aimed at, let's say, 5 to 8 year olds. There's the books out there seem that I know. 18.
So the guy who did Captain Underpants, he's from Scholastic, he is the top selling kids guy. He does Dogman. Yeah, and that book, I actually bought Dogman. I gotta go get it and read it eventually, do a review on it. But people are like, what is this? I thought you were talking about Batman usually. So that's a book that generally sells to like kids between ages of 6 and 10. And that book, oh my goodness, what I found out, it actually outsells characters like Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man. And keep in mind, this is Dogman. It sells a lot, right? Because remember, people did like the charts, and people don't look at some of these charts. Scholastic, which is Dogman, so what the company's brand is under, does a lot of those sales. So you're telling me in the year 2024, kids have, there's more money that exists now as in theory, right? Their parents like, you know what? Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Dogman.
Yeah,
that's great. Like, I'm just surprised. I have no problem with the guy making their pants getting a lot of money. It's fine, but it's just crazy to me that kids are more gravitated to that character than a legacy character like Batman, Spider-Man, Superman. It's like I'm still trying to wrap my head around how is that? Like that's crazy to think about. As well, like a parent now could just like get their kid a Batman comic and just give it to him, but they're like, nah, I want to read about Dogman. It's like, huh? Man, if you told me as a kid I could get a bunch of Batman comics for like $10, man, sign me up. you know, like, and then obviously manga's dominating, you
Yep.
know, so it's basically manga, and then that's crazy. Like Dogman dominates Western comics. That's crazy to think about, you know. So it shows
Well,
you, and kids know about manga, so they know about comics. They know they exist. It's just they're
yeah.
preferring this medium. It's not like they don't know what this exists. They know it exists. I think kids are a little bit more smarter, a little bit, right? So
Mhm.
that's what I'm always bring up to people is people know this exists here. They're just choosing specifically not to support it. That's a bad thing, you know?
Yeah.
And that's not good for the future. Because if they know it exists and they know it's not good, that means there needs to be, I don't know what you think, a huge course correction in how like the stories are told. Because it seems like the stories are not being told impactful enough to make people want to go buy the books, actually, you know?
Yeah, I think there's something. It's not that just that they're not impactful enough. I think just people can't relate enough. Because you had heroes like, let's say, Spider-Man, and when he was first out, like he didn't know how to talk to girls. He had dandruff. He was broke. People made fun of him for living with his Aunt May and his like hand-me-downs. And a lot of people, there was something there for a lot of people to relate to. Fantastic Four, they were a family that was always fighting. Who didn't fight with their family? So they kind of went from that to other, let's call them social issues that only affect like less than 1% of the US population. So then it's like, well, I can't really relate to that. Like X-Men, they talk about it, coming in the civil rights era and this and that, but they wrote it in a generic enough way to where anybody who's an outsider could relate to that book. You didn't have to be part of one specific group because theirs was made up. Their mutant thing was made up. Nobody in real life can shoot fireballs out of their hands. So, you know, but I think the modern books, people just can't, like kids can't relate to them in general. And they're not doing anything heroic. They're not giving an example of like, oh, I want to be like this person. That's kind of another.
You think it's got to do with the fact that it's convoluted continuity too? Because like when a kid
Well,
wants to get into Naruto, they could just watch Naruto episode 1 or read Naruto manga volume 1. When it comes to like you try to get your kid into Batman, even you yourself are gonna be like, well, what do I even get into start?
Yeah, there's okay, wow. Now you're getting into like my conspiracy theory. It's like you watch those detective movies and they've got like all the pictures on the wall with the strings connected to them. That's like how my what's wrong with the American comic book industry looks like. So one thing that went really wrong, if we go back, let's go back to where comics really started off, superhero comics in the 1930s, right? Kids like those books. Then those kids grew up. We know during World War II, a lot of the soldiers were reading comics. They would swap them with each other all the time. So you had people who were 18, but you also had people in the 20s. When they came back, they kind of grew out of a lot of the superhero stuff and they were more into horror. So, like creep shows, Vault of Horror, that kind of stuff. And when Seductions of the Innocent came out, that was the book written by a communist who thought that he was. I can't. What was the guy's? Frederick Werthman. He was from the Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School was in Germany. They were the communists, and they were fighting the Nazis for control of Germany. They lost. For whatever reason, the government said, set up shop in New York, no problem. So Frederick Werthman, he wrote Seduction of the Innocents, which blamed youth crime on comic books. And there's a great book called Boobs of Steel, written by J. Ishiro Finney, where he goes through the history of that and how Werthman in particular hated Wonder Woman because she had a large chest. But because of this, we got the Comics Code Authority, and that sort of killed any development of comics. So what happened was you still had comics for kids. You had the Disney stuff, you had Archie, you had all that kind of romance comics, but then you kind of had to age out because you weren't allowed to talk about more adult themes. So that lasted until the 80s, you know, and then by the 80s, you started to get a little more adult stuff, but then the industry collapsed. You weren't able to get books in convenient locations anymore. And that I think is a lot of the problem. There was never this place for adults to go. There was never a place to continue. So the comic book companies, what they did is they said, "Oh, well, we have Spider-Man, so we're just going to like reboot Spider-Man." So actually, in the 80s, there was an editor called Jim Shooter who was trying to age up the universe. So that's when you saw Peter Parker get married to Mary Jane Watson. And then the natural progression would have been, okay, they have kids, and then maybe he drops off, and then you could have somebody sort of take Spider-Man's place, which, you know, if you look at a character like Miles Morales, a lot of people's problem with him is not actually Miles Morales, it's that he calls himself Spider-Man. You know, but if the universe were to have been allowed to age up, you know, Peter Parker would have been like late 30s, early 40s. He would have been retired. He could have been like a professor at a community college in New York. He meets this kid, Miles Morales, doing a summer internship and realizes, holy crap, this is that new kid wearing the spider suit. Peter could have then been his mentor, you know, and you pass the torch. So that's how you would have gotten a series to continue. You would get new characters that start in with kids with like Miles, and eventually, you know, they'd age up with him. But they screwed all that up.
Do you think they messed up in trying to have an idea? I think the idea was like, hey, we'll have this other Spider-Man for this generation of kids, you know? But the people that wrote for that generation's ex-popular character just wrote him so bad that it just didn't hit off, because that's what it kind of feels like. Because they did with a lot of characters, like various versions of Batman, various versions of Superman, various versions of all these characters. That's what I initially think. I think they tried to be like, hey, this new generation of kids are coming. They're going to need their Spider-Man. But I don't understand why the kids coming up can't have our Spider-Man too. He would just be an adult, he would have kids, because that's how TV would naturally go. For the most part, TV would have you set up a family, characters or whatever. Then by the time we be old, they'd be the ones that have kids. That'd be a natural progression of a character. But it never felt like that ever happened with some of these characters. Like there were stories I remember where Peter would be married to Mary Jane, like that one where she got injured and he had to make a deal with like Mephisto, where she like forgot him, and like this. Okay, at this point, you were just cursed. You were just legit cursed, man. Just throw in the towel, honestly.
Yeah, that was like the worst deal ever. It was actually Aunt May that got injured, and in order to save her life, Peter had to give up his life with Mary Jane.
God, please.
And it's like, Aunt May is like 95 years old. She's not only going to last another month anyways. You know, that's the worst deal ever. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the problem. One company that did it right was DC with the Batman Beyond cartoon show. Right? Bruce Wayne was old. He was Batman, but not, you know, he wasn't able to get out and do the thing. So you have Terry McGinnis, and he takes over kind of that role. But he's someone that young people can relate to, whereas the Bruce Wayne, you know, older people could relate to that character. So
and that in the show, Terry's not outshining Bruce either. I've seen a lot of people bring that up too, and trying to make it a negative thing. You can tell they don't watch the show. At no point does it ever feel like one is stepping on the other. It's a mutual relationship throughout the entire show. They grow to even. It's crazy because it's real. They're eventually father and son. It's like that relationship throughout the entire thing. Yeah, it's also randomly weird too, but it's something where I feel like that was the end goal, was to have all these characters age and they have younger versions take over when they got too old. They just got hurt in a battle. But then for some reason, the storytelling just never improved past that point, or these shows would get canceled. Like, because you know how people talk about Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Static Shock, that group of shows. People love those shows. It's very rare you find someone who legitimately just doesn't like them. But those shows got canceled, axed. They never brought them back. You know, like that Teen Titans show I grew up with back in like 2006, 2008. Great show. A lot of people like that one. Another one that just gets canceled. Like, why do these shows that do resonate with people get canceled? Is it because they're not making that much money on the show? I don't know, honestly. That's crazy, you know?
That's exactly what it is. It's money.
Yeah, it's ratings, because, you know, TV functions off ratings, you know?
Exactly. But that's also a problem with the comics. So what happened was instead of, in my opinion, what
Mhm.
happened is instead of building these younger characters up, what they did instead is they said, okay, well, we'll just reboot, the JLA, or we'll reboot, New 52.
Sounds good. Okay.
And then,
Sounds like
okay,
a
well,
million
we'll
dollar
start
idea.
over. Yeah, we'll start over, and then we'll have a clean slate, and then we'll have
Mhm.
a number one for all those manga fans who don't know where to start. And it's like, well, you can do that, but they have so much baggage from all the history,
Mhm.
like it just doesn't work. So I think they really screwed themselves by this point. And the other thing is, in some ways, just the nature of it. For whatever reason, Japanese comics or manga, I should say, have
Mhm.
developed more of a system where there's a beginning and middle and an end to a story. Like
Yeah.
all those character story, maybe the characters will show up as like secondary characters in another story later, but like there's Dragon Ball, then there's Dragon Ball Z. Like each arc has a beginning, middle, and end, which for whatever reason, American comic book publishers decided, nah, we're not going to do that.
The only
So
one that doesn't really follow that is like Gundam. Because Gundam isn't an anime where it's like the same characters you see. It's usually different people. But
right.
even with that, Gundam is very huge. I like Gundam
Mhm.
myself. I love that show.
Sure.
I've watched this. I was a young little kid. It shows you that if storytelling is good and like enough, I know that enough people watch episode ones of everything to know that
Mhm.
it'll be worth the investment, right? So people will watch episode 1, 2, 3, whatever, then eventually check out or stay in. And that anime shows right there. It's kind of like, I guess you could say it's anecdotal because it's just like literally one example, but it shows you that this is a long running anime with mechas fighting each other, different characters every single series since its inception. People still keep watching. So it shows that people will like different characters. It's just you need to tell a good story, and you can't have the newest characters stomping on other characters. You know,
Yes.
like a guy in a recent video gave me a great example of like manga. So you have like a base, you have like, oh, you say Prince of Tennis. That's an
Mhm.
anime. Well, Prince of Tennis isn't trying to be a ninja anime. Prince of Tennis
Yeah.
is not trying to be a superhero anime. A soccer anime is not trying to go and tell superhero animes like you're doing it wrong, we're doing it better, and you're a bigot phobe. No, they're
Mhm.
just in their own lane doing their own thing. And I think that's kind of where things started getting screwed. Is like too many weirdos, too many like weird, odd people, because that's what this space is kind of made of, is weird people,
Of
started
course.
talking in certain ways that make these companies think like, oh my God, there's a huge market for this. It's like, no, like
Yeah.
by that logic, because I think people always say, I have to see myself in the character. By that logic, you could not have liked Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles then.
Yeah.
Because none of us are Green Mutant Turtles. None of you could have liked Transformers. You couldn't like anime by that logic because they don't like black people in some of these animes. Other people grew up loving watching Dragon Ball Z. How are you relating to Goku by that logic then? None
Yeah.
of it doesn't make sense. It's just it was something. I don't know how that infested the industry. I don't know how that became big as it is because it's nonsense at the end of the day. And then these companies kind of wonder why their stuff isn't selling. And there was a video that I did watch recently where it's kind of like these guys are lying to their shareholders about how much this stuff actually sells. It's all contrived BS. That's
Mhm.
mostly what it is. It's not surviving because it's doing well. It's surviving because these people are lying about the numbers. They're just fudging them. This stuff is doing
Oh,
bad, actually.
absolutely. And well, part of the problem too is the big two, well, the big three really. Well, I'll include
Mhm.
Image. They're not technically selling to us. They're selling to stores. So as long as
Yeah.
the sales
Mhm.
to stores are higher, they're in good shape. So
Right.
the
Mhm.
problem is when the stores are like, well, I have to have this one issue that has the so and so variant cover, but I got to buy like 50 other books in order to get that one. Then it will, I don't know why they're making those bad deals, but the numbers are going to look inflated.
Yeah, that was the thing. That's why the sales are up because
Yeah.
because a lot of people don't remember. You would know this. So remember about 5 years ago, even before like COVID, this like grading thing started happening with a lot of industries like Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, comic books had this a lot too, Magic the Gathering. So what people do now is stores will order something from a lot of the videos that I've watched from actual store owners because that I need to have the information from actual store owners. People on Twitter be like, "I'm a store owner. I'm ordering," like you are a bot. XX pussy destroyer, you are not a store owner. So I watch these store owner videos. These people basically will order a number one of something, and the sales increase only because someone is trying to find the best actual looking book to go and grade it to sell it. The rest of them don't sell, right? So it's mostly like literally just one guy coming in, going through all the fucking whatever characters' books, so number ones, to find that one to grade. Those other ones don't sell, and a lot of people. This is what I kind of find out too. You can refund these books, so a lot of the books get refunded back. How do you count that for sales? You didn't sell any of those. You know, there's so much. Like even today, I learned another thing that happened. I was like, oh my god, it just gets so bad. It's like you put like one layer of this onion, just a whole load of just crap just comes out. You know, so people. So by that, so even just want to bring it up so everyone can kind of understand. That means people are not reading the stories. People are literally just buying books to grade them, to slab them. So how do we translate that? People are buying books. Okay, we're getting some progress. Open and read it. Nah, I'd rather just grade it, sell it. Oh God, good Lord. Another hurdle. Why do you think that is though? What is this big deal with grading, man? I find grading things to be so overrated. Honestly.
Yeah, well, I think it's sort of a mentality that goes back to around 1990. So what happened was, the Silver Age was in the 60s. So 20 years later, we're in the 80s, right? So by that point, most people had thrown out their books. Maybe their mom had thrown it out when they were cleaning out the attic or something. So there were relatively few amounts of these classic books. So they became valuable because of their scarcity, right? So there was a huge collector's market back in the day. Like I was buying old X-Men issues, and I get an old issues in the 100s, for like $1. And then like a year later, it was $4.50. So that's, a huge jump,
right?
40% jump. So I think there's still some of that mentality. Now that actually crashed the markets, but that's what got Jim Lee's X-Men to be the greatest selling comic of all time, because people wanted to buy all 5 covers because they thought, oh, in 20 years, this will be worth some money. No. And then some people still kept that mentality. I've got some old, I think I got X-Men 94 floating around somewhere. And I've got some other really old ones, which are worth some money, but anything from 1990 on is worth almost nothing. And the other problem is, I don't know where you're going to unload these collections because no one wants to pay you what they're worth, basically.
So what I've seen basically is, so people that don't want to own a comic shop, they'll basically buy those. You know how you see like those big giant long box lots on eBay?
Yeah.
People buy them and they'll get the order in, they'll organize them, alphabet organize them, slab them, and just sell the best ones out of the collection. So, and and that people have to understand, just with that alone, that would also hurt comic book shops because they also thrive off of buying old collections, getting the best books, and selling them to you. So not only are you competing with bad stories that can't sell your stuff, you're competing with bad stories that you can't sell books through for the most part, unless you're getting through graded people that want to grade the stuff. Then you're also competing with a guy like me who can just sit in here with my underwear on, no shirt, Cheez-It stains on my tank top, and just sell issues to customers potentially on my eBay store. It doesn't happen, but just keep in mind, that's a lot of stuff. Then you're also competing with people that are doing the indie stuff too. So it's just all this stuff that goes on right now too.
Did you happen to watch this video? There's a guy.
That's actually a great video. Outside of the Comicsgate comment, he actually brings up a lot of great insight that I implore people to go and watch the video. Yes, ignore the Comicsgate stuff. You can tell he's liberal, he's voting for Joe Biden. It's okay. We can all vote. Differences is fine. Outside of the Comicsgate stuff, I implore people, please go and watch the video. There's a lot of great info from this guy, because it gives you that store perspective, actually.
Yeah, and I think the store perspective is important. However, same with like the Mark Millar interview from a couple months ago. My question is like, well, what responsibility do the stores have in this? Because if you watch the whole video, he doesn't seem happy about the Comicsgate. And one thing in particular, like he doesn't like some people, which, okay, fine. But another thing is he doesn't seem to like the crowdfunding model.
Mhm.
He complains that like, oh, they're on streams to promote their book, and then you don't see them again until they promote another book or something. Yeah, but what's wrong with that? Why is it bad that people who are creating books go out and try to promote their work?
Yeah,
Do they have an
that yeah.
obligation one all the time? And the other thing is just like what you mentioned. At one point, he says, "Oh, I'm competing with these wannabe shops who are selling stuff on eBay from their homes, and they don't
Mhm,
have the overhead that I do."
mhm.
So there's a good. I mean, he does have a lot of good points, and I do
Yeah,
recommend that.
it's
So
not a bad video at all. It's this is a video that I think it'll open the eyes of a lot of people to truly what's going on. The Comicsgate stuff, it threw me off. Thought like, well, if you're gonna say he's I love good lord. So he's talking about obviously Ethan because he brings up Cyberfrog.
yeah, yeah.
And I've never been under that mindset of like, oh, one person is someone I don't like, so that means the entire group is bad. Because that's the reason why you can tell he kind of swings in that liberal camp is because that's how they talk. One person does something, so the entire group is bad. But the other double-edged sword to that is he offers some insight in his store, and people
Mhm.
don't check. He's actually from New York City, where a lot of their shops are closing. So the Comicsgate stuff is just pure cringe. He gives no examples of it. And the part you mentioned earlier where he said that, I watched that and I was like, that's how it should be. You should be creating and you come out to promote your stuff when it's done.
Mhm.
Oh, good Lord.
So 8 movies, they come out with a month-long commercial, basically, then poof, they're gone. Like, yeah, that's kind of true, except that there's a couple things with that. First of all, can not everyone is good with having their own channel.
Right.
Not everyone has the like being able to be on a channel and to talk and to promote yourself. That's a very separate skill from
Mhm,
even running a show like you or I run, where we have people on and we talk about various topics.
mhm,
Um, so and this is new in the industry. This is really only a few years old if you think about it. Because
mhm.
before, maybe if you were one of the top people in the industry, you would sit down with a reporter for like a
One of those
long.
magazine interviews. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But people are doing it all the time here. And it's easy to say something that you shouldn't,
Mhm.
or just slip of the tongue in just one show, and that can totally screw you over. So it's a different skill, and a lot of people in the indie scene, it's not like people in who are working for the big two, who theoretically that's their daytime job. Like, a lot of people, they go to work, they come home, they've got to produce a book, and they got to do these promotional streams.
You
Like,
also
so,
potentially have kids yelling at you too. I hear kids are not pretty easy to
right.
take care of. Yeah.
Exactly.
When dad comes home, they kind of want dad's attention. So you gotta have to, play with them a little bit. It's
Yeah.
like I could understand what he's saying, but that's the problem with the comic industry, as everyone's gonna know. People say stuff and they never elaborate on specifics. People keep talking in broad generalities. That doesn't help anybody. I get what he's saying. I do. I can understand what he's saying. The problem with what he's saying is it's not the way he's saying it. It's like when you make a statement like that, if you don't
Mhm.
emphasize what you're talking about, then I don't know what you're saying then, because yeah, a lot of people really aren't media trained. I'm not myself. I had to learn it. Obviously, I had to learn to talk, conversate. I had to learn to promote and all that stuff. And that's how most creatives are. Though you don't really ever hear from people until they're promoting their stuff. Honestly, you
Yeah.
know. But
Well, and
comics gay, as he mentions, that they stirring the pot. Well, if he doesn't like drama from his own side, he doesn't want to get involved in drama. Why are you bringing this up? And then second of all, if these whoever's stirring the pot, you could name them by name, because that
yeah.
would show that you have balls. A lot of people keep doing that. It's that broad generality thing that screws over everyone. Because if we can identify a problem, then talk about it, that's another productive way of moving forward. People do this thing of like, oh, it's this person doing this. Got a name because I know a lot of this person's. I ain't reading your mind,
Yep. Well, I mean, that's the thing too, is you know how many hundreds of people are theoretically part of Comicsgate, or at least
or
interact with
affiliated.
Comicsgate.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Mhm,
so okay, I if he doesn't like Ethan Van Sciver, I've got no problem with that. If he
mhm,
doesn't like this creator or that creator, I don't have a problem with that.
mhm.
But are you telling me the guy who's struggling to sell like 50 copies because he can't get exposure? and he wants to go on one of those shows, are you saying that he shares all the same views and whatnot? I mean,
That's why
there's
you
a
can
lot
tell he's that's where you can tell he has that
yeah,
mindset. Even though he said, I'm not this way. I can tell you have it if because there's people like you said in Comicsgate or like Iron Age or whatever that their product's actually not bad at all. They just don't have exposure
yeah,
because they don't really know how to navigate, how to get contacts and make relationships with people. That's a totally different thing. And now, because this is back to something that I had to deal with back when I left another group of people, they would have the thing of like, you stream with this person, you're my enemy. And it's like,
yeah,
hello? Are you like 5 years old? You have that where if you go on someone's show that someone theoretically, in theory, doesn't like, you don't even know they're the person that they don't like. Now you
yeah.
absolve all their values and everything they've ever said, and you co-signed everything. It's like, fucking hell, man. What are we doing here?
To me, that's weird, and
Mhm.
as someone who has a show, like I'm going to talk to who I want to talk to, who I think is interesting. Um, there's been the occasional person I've had to turn down for various reasons, but for the most part, I have anyone on, and like if they got beef with somebody else, then what's it to me is kind of my point of view. I just want to talk about comics. I want to talk about tabletop role playing games, movies, entertainment. So it's such a weird thing, and I don't like these purity tests from any side.
Mm. Yeah, like I have no clue why people keep doing that. That is just I, people can call it jealousy. This it's a mixture of everything essentially. Because what a lot of people don't like to admit, because these are like unspoken rules that I can clearly
Mhm.
tell in people. If you just been alive long enough, you kind of know them. It's like people don't like other people like encroaching on their territory. People are very territorial, though it's not shown in the ways that people think. Other ways will be shown. Most people just show that stuff through action. So like with the Air July stuff, right? People. There was a
Mhm.
guy that made a post where I think it was Lawrence made a post where he's talking about some of these guys are saying some pretty off the wall racist shit, But a lot of these guys are like, I'm not racist. But that's the thing though. I would never know if you are. You would never just admit that. No one's gonna be like, hey, I hate Eric because he's black. I'm a racist. No one's gonna admit that. You would have to legitimately analyze it through their actions, would you not? No one's that dumb. Like yet. I mean, this industry is crazy. Anything's possible. But
Yeah.
no one you don't have to have someone admit something to you to see it in their actions, do you not? It seems like these people have to have it literally right in front of them to understand that's how that person is, which I
Yeah.
find crazy. Yeah.
Well, the other thing too is like, why, if something doesn't appeal to you, why talk about it at all? Like, with our Eric July, I'm not really so into superhero comics these days,
Mhm.
like King
Yeah.
and Cowl type stuff. So
Mhm.
I haven't really gotten into any of this stuff. I like Renzo Rodriguez. I've seen him do some good stuff. Not to say, he's above criticism or something like
Mhm.
that. But I just haven't really talked about Eric's stuff because I don't know anything about it. I've seen that he's done some stuff, but I haven't read the books, so I can't really competently say anything about. But I'm not going to go out and be like, oh, well, screw Eric. He da, 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 da.
Mhm.
It's just not for me. Whereas like I don't understand why people got to throw in their 2 cents
On
or
everything. Dude,
yeah,
it's on everything. I swear, like someone will be in an argument with someone else, then their friend who it has nothing to do with, they don't even know where the comments, because on Twitter, the
mhm,
thread starts from somewhere and then it just goes into a chain of
yeah,
just feces shit. Someone will see a conversation halfway and go, I'm jumping into this. This has nothing to do with you. That's how all this starts generally. Someone is having a conversation with someone or an argument, and then someone who's offended on someone else's behalf goes in their conversation and starts an argument with another person. It's like, I don't got time to be doing that, dude. It's
mhm,
ridiculous. Everyone feels like they have to have an opinion on everything. Everything. I could put out a tweet right now saying, I hate avocados. I think avocados taste like crap. And people are gonna be like, "You're an avocado cis. Avocado lives matter." And I'm like, "Bruh, it's not that serious. You really had an opinion about me not liking avocados, really?" Because that's what the internet does. The internet makes things. People get the sense of like, I need to push myself in a way that makes me look more superior than I really do. Well, this guy tried telling us earlier he was from college. His IQ was like 2. I was like, dude, that's not true. None of that's true. We know it's not true. And even if it was, I don't care. You know, people do that on Twitter a lot too. People will be like, I'm married. I care why. Yeah, it's like random internet guy telling me he's married. It's like, I care why. And it's like, people try boasting too much. People try indirectly like slinging their freaking imaginary meat in front of you. It's like, dude, I don't care what you own in your personal life. What does that have to do with you interjecting yourself into my conversation about something you know nothing about? It's just, that's why I think the indie comic scene generally suffers, because people just feel like they have to give their opinion on everything and stuff that people don't understand either, man. It's just constant stuff they don't understand. It's just, remember the other one we did 2 months ago before the year 2023 was over, man, which was the entitlement versus promotion. I was like, the takes were so horrendous. I swear, I was trying to get banned off Twitter for a week because I didn't have to hear and read any of this stuff. It's disgusting, the fact that people are this dumb when it comes to this stuff. A bigger content creator is not going to promote you for the most part because, well, this is their life. They have to pay their house note, their rent, houses have property tax. I hear those for pretty high now. Car note, food, bills. Yeah, your random whatever ain't going to be paying the channel. I'm sorry. And no one's entitled to do that, though. I used to think that way a long time ago myself. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm a moron. I had to educate myself on this. Because the thing is, I know you saw what was going on. The entitlement versus that is, you have no benefit to that person. That's just how you gotta say it. You have legit no benefit to that person. You're not on the same radar. Now, if they want to have you on and they're your friend, that's different, obviously.
Yeah,
but these people want to be brought on someone's channel they don't even like. Because we need to keep that in mind too. They don't even like this other person. They just want to come on to just basically, literally clout chase off someone. That's what they want. They don't even like this other person. All these people that they claim don't help people, you see their tweets. They don't even like these people. You want to go on someone's show you don't like and have a terrible interaction with them only because they have a big audience. That sounds like clout chasing to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't understand the whole thing. There's seeing it from the point of view of someone who has a small show, but like, you know, I'm happy to have
nerdrotic.
I'm happy to have I'm happy to have smaller creators on. That's not a problem for me. But at the same time, like I sort of need a certain amount of like competency from them. Like if you want to come on and promote a book, show me parts of the book, you know, give me, do you have any images? Do you have a script? What do you got? And if your answer is, well, nothing, I just have this idea, I want to promote it, I'll probably say, well, you know, come back when you have a little more done and I'll be happy to sit down and talk with you. And speaking of which, aren't you working on a book?
I need to. That was one of the ideas I wanted to get done this year, but given how there's so much, I'm pacing myself. I should start working on it this year. Should be. Because generally when it comes to things, I want to be fully dedicated to them. You know, I don't want to like half-ass anything. So I've also had this. I sometimes always get in my head too. I get in my own head too. I'm like, man, do I really want to do that? You know, because like I did write a story back in the day. I was really sad one weekend or whatever because I was a loser. I had no friends and I don't give up parties, whatever. I was watching Saturday morning cartoons when I was 17, and you know, I was you know, just watching old movies, right? And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go outside, listen to music, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna find something and write this story. So I did. I wrote for like. I kind of wrote like a movie form, so I wrote like 7 installments. I was just going crazy. These are terrible ideas, guys. These are bad characters. But the ideas that I made were fine. I'm still going to implement them if I ever do create this story. But keeping it to myself, like, I don't want to be a person that creates a story and it's bad out the gate. And if it ever becomes a book, it wouldn't be like a graphic novel or anything, because you know, that's a lot of money initially up front. But I do like the idea of having a written novel and seeing that there's something that I can make of that first, you know? But I want to make sure that if I'm doing it, I'm fully dedicated to it and I have my ideas fully fleshed out to the point where, you know, I'm not wasting time, because, you know, this stuff costs a lot of money. You know, like you want an editor, all this stuff. And it's like, I don't got time to be wasting time on stuff that I could probably do myself to make sure it's better in the long term.
Yeah, yeah. I yeah, that's definitely true. I've been working on stuff for like 6 years, still not getting close.
Yeah, and it's not having to do with anything with quality. It's just more, some days you're like, oh god, I could do like this video that'll probably
Mhm,
just express my thoughts better, Or there's days where I'll just do a podcast and I'll just get my feelings out that way. I but even before I die, I told myself I'm
mhm.
gonna make that book, whether it be this year, next year, before I ever croak. Whenever that happens, when I'm like figuring 80 or 90, I do want to make sure that that is something that I leave behind is a book series, maybe multiple book series. Actually, who knows?
Cool.
Actually, because like you have like kids and you're like, oh, I'll just have one kid in the end. Kind of you have like three more, so kind of wanted it to be someone like that. Turns out I've been looking at like book stuff.
Mhm.
The romance genre actually is the number one seller in most books now. A lot of people, because I can see why life is teetered into a way where people want romance so bad. Like the old ways of romance is dead to some people, and romance has made a comeback in genres actually, which I think is really really cool. So I thought to incorporate romance to be like my first book, but I don't know how to write anything from a female perspective. My females have to have big boobs and they have like big thighs or whatever.
A lot of women like that too. Um, it's interesting you mentioned that because, historically, romance comics were huge sellers, uh,
I didn't know
for
that actually. That's
for
crazy.
comic companies, and then it petered out in the '70s. Like, my mom, was a kid in the '50s, and she told me, all the time, like, "Oh, yeah, I read, this romance book, that romance comic." Um, and I think what happened, one of the reasons why manga is so popular is because there are romance books in various manga genres, whereas like there's almost no romance in Western comics. Like by the '80s, all that was gone, and all you had left with capes and cowls and some toy license books.
Yeah, yeah. And their romances were always like you knew certain characters like each other, but they never wanted to take it that far because obviously there's kids
Yeah.
watching and they just terrible at storytelling too. Like it's crazy because like that's a tried and true formula that always works. That's what gravitated me toward those Disney animated movies. That's why Cinderella's one of my favorites. Because I like a good, like
Mhm.
girl, guy, romance story like that. A lot of people like those stories. It's just like over time they became the same thing constantly. It's really
Yeah.
hard on innovating on something that is so just basic but gets the job done so well to the point where it becomes stale when too many people do it. Because
Mhm.
you don't think in the story guy's gonna have that girl, but it's that middle part that is really really like dicey to pick apart. So that's the story that I was initially going to tell. It's a romance story, mixed in with obviously like action and all that other stuff. It's like how do you do it where it's not cliche? But people naturally gravitate to cliche things, even though they complain about things being cliche. It's really hard to navigate. That's the problem.
I think don't worry about it too much because when you come up with stuff like that, you have one
Mhm.
audience is younger people, and so for them, the romance is going to be new. Like when you're a teenager, you don't have so much romantic experience, right?
Oh,
So
true. Yeah.
anything for them will be new. And the other thing is, if you look at YA books, who is the number one buyer of YA books? It's women in their 30s and 40s.
Yes, that's true.
So
Yes.
for them, they don't care about the cliche. They like the cliche. They want to sort of relive this younger period in their life where the romance was fresh and new. So I think don't worry about that. You know, it's interesting. I've been asking people this question like sort of slowly. Like I had Alterna publisher Peter Samedi. Every now and again, I'll ask him like, "Oh yeah, so you gonna have any romance titles in the line?" And he's like, "No." And I've had a couple other people who are publishing books done by
Mhm.
others. Like, no. And to me, I think that's kind of a shame. I think that there's a real potential big market. If you look at one of the few books that did have romance back in the day, that would be the X-Men.
Right.
And that was one of their selling points. They had a much larger female audience than the average comic book at the time.
It's
But they
crazy.
had several romances, you had love triangles, and people really responded to that.
I also think it's somewhat based in our climate too,
Mhm.
because there's been so much discussion on like, what is a good marriage and all
Yep.
this stuff, and I could understand why it's making a comeback though, because as humans, people naturally crave like romance, love, affection, all that stuff. Oh no, these women will have big boobs and big thighs. And my women gotta look good. I can't believe people are literally out there selling stories with fat, ugly women. That is not gonna appeal to anybody. Do you actually know any books out there with obese women on them trying to sell? I don't think I've ever seen one in my life, actually.
Not that
Nope.
actually sells.
People like fit women. Come to find out. I could understand why it's making a comeback. I could, because given the climate of everything, people want a good romance story. The problem here is, well, how is yours going to be different from the other 80? Well, mine will have big boob, big thigh women. That's how it's going to work.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
And
And
my
you know,
guys have to be scrawny losers, and the women tell them that they're worthless and they won't amount to anything. I hear it's a tried and true formula that works out very well these days.
there's nothing wrong with that. You could start with that. Steve Rogers was a scrawny wimp who was a loser, and he got himself all swole. So there's no reason you couldn't do that. Or maybe you do start out with a fat woman who actually works her way into being thin. You know, it's all about the process.
So let's see. I think the other thing is, the book does well, potentially here or there. And, how are you thinking like book 2? Because like book 1's probably always the hardest one, but
Mhm.
2 is always, I think, the problem, because it's not really always about how you start, it's about how you finish. And it's about
Mhm.
how you keep people interested in that window. Because every series and anything
Mhm.
after episode like 1, a book 1 or
Yeah,
whatever, yeah, it always teeters off. But remember, there's always those seasons later on that peak based off of how good the story starts building up again. So that's
sure.
always been my thing, is how do you keep people, even podcasting has this too. How do you keep people interested after episode 1? It's about that stretch you're going to have after everything. That's always the big thing.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, to me, so one thing that I see that goes wrong in indie comics is that whatever issue 1 is, it's basically like a setup issue. It's like how someone got their powers and this and that. And then right when we get to the end, it's like, okay, now you know enough that we can tell the story next time. And it's like, nah, I just spent all that money on something that didn't happen, so I'm not going to spend number 2. So I think the first way is you have to have a complete story in issue number 1.
Mhm.
And then the issue should really be kind of character driven, where people can understand like the personality of character A is different from B, is different from C. And so then, everyone will naturally gravitate towards some character or another. Even if it's only like theoretically something like a Superman would be, really about one main character, but there's other side characters in there that people will, naturally sort of gravitate towards. So you got that. And then, but even though the first issue is more character driven, and we learn about the motivations and in either the current conflicts or potential conflicts, you have to do a little bit of foreshadowing where, you know, if if it's a romance, maybe there's three friends, right? Like two guys and a girl. And we can see that, maybe guy A is pretty overt in liking the girl, but then we kind of see like, oh, guy B, he kind
Mhm.
of seems like he likes her, even though he's not being real upfront about it. So we know that there's some drama there. Drama doesn't have to be in conflict, doesn't have to be punching each other. It can just where characters are going to come in conflict. So even if they're not already there, um, we should have indications like, oh, they're going to get there. So like, I want to see when that blows up.
And I think that's another thing too, is like people's brains work so differently, because I know a lot of people say they like the older way of storytelling, but when a
Mhm.
book comes out and it's not what it's basically kind of what the older form of storytelling was, where it's like set up and
Mhm.
stuff, it would go, all right, no, nothing happened. I am back. And then it's like, well, I mean, great. So you have to battle new ways of telling stories, that are also entertaining in the moment while also trying to set up everything. That's a
Yes,
lot of
exactly. Well,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think you have to set up everything.
Oh yeah.
But there has to be like like in Fantastic Four when they started out, they didn't set up everything, but they set up that already in issue 1 there's some friction between the 4 team members, which was new at the time. So it could be something like that, but they didn't really explore how much it's going to affect a character. But there should be some indications of like
Mhm,
where it's going to go.
mhm.
But I think I do think that a complete story, like a first, second, and third act, where when people finish that first issue,
Mhm.
like to me, cliffhangers are like a no-go until you've been doing this for a long time.
Oh
Like there
yeah.
has to be a long enough run. So people at the end of the first one, they have to feel satisfied with it. Although you can give indications that more is to come. Like let's say you're doing a World War II story
Mhm.
and your characters are your characters are in France and they're trying to escape from Nazis who are looking for them, right?
Mhm.
So stuff happens and at the end they barely manage to escape. All right. Well then people know like, well, okay, but they're still in France and they're still Nazis. People are still going to be looking for them. Like, what happens next? So even though you don't explicitly say that, and you ended the story, they escape. People are, whew, I'm glad these people I like escaped. But there's the implications that more is coming on. I think that's like the best way to get to number 2. Is like people are happy with the first one. They're
Yeah.
satisfied with the story, but there's still the indication, but oh, hey, we're not quite done with the story. There's more that can come out. So I think that's the way to bridge 1 and 2. And then
Yeah.
the big thing is you have to decide how much you want it. Like a lot of people will say,
Oh yeah. That's
make
another big problem too.
make like a 48-page issue, uh, which a few years ago maybe, but I think it's like we were talking about earlier. If I can get 160 pages or 48, which am I going to choose? You
Yeah.
know,
What's more
people
bang
will
for your
choose
buck?
to
Yeah,
tell you.
that's the thing.
Yeah,
Because that's why I think manga also does better too, is because people
yeah,
are more reserved with their money. Plus, since they're more in the know now compared to like back then, you try to get your kid a book. It's like you could get your kid that 24-page floppy for $6, or you could wait, spend an
mhm,
extra $5 and get 160 pages, 6 chapters. See,
yep,
I think people would go the extra distance if you make it worth their time, and also
yeah,
like you mentioned before, when it
for
comes to
sure.
like crowdfunding and things like that, got to make sure the story's worthwhile in that moment, because there's you're not going to get that book right when you're buying it and you're trying to back it. You're waiting like 6 months potentially to almost a year to get that book. So there's another
Yeah,
underlying thing there too, is you have to make sure that book is worth it if you're trying
yeah,
to ask people's money and you're waiting like 6-8 months to get that product done. I could see why people would be angry. You waited 8 months for this and it's just like, it's kind of just fucking whatever. It's like, yeah, it's gonna leave a sour taste in people's mouths. That's why I think people don't read them as much as I think they don't. Is I think people back the books, get them, and they don't read them, because
mhm,
you would be very disappointed in your favorite content creators if you backed the story, bought it, got it, and then you're like, oh wow, I waited 8 months for this. So I think people are hesitant on reading them because they don't want to be disappointed by the lack of story that might be there. Which I think is another conversation a lot of people don't have, is why don't more people actually review these books? I've noticed there's very little actual reviews on people's books. And I
yeah,
think it's because a lot of people don't want to say this. And I'm just always the guy to say these things because I got to be the guy to do it. I think the fans don't think they're as good as their other legendary people that they've been watching and following for a long time. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with
yeah,
that. You got to earn people's like interest in your stuff. They know these other people are better than you because they've been consuming their stuff a lot longer. Could be books, movies, whatever. You have a closer relationship with them. They just probably don't think you're as good. I think that's what it really boils down to. There's nothing wrong with that. That's natural human interaction. Are you gonna be really into your best friend's comic book more than like something like Chuck Dixon is? Probably not. To be honest here, probably not. You know.
Yeah, there's that. But I think, I used to review books.
Yeah.
And I'll probably start posting more, not reviews, but more like, hey, here's this book and it has this and that type of short form content in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the problem is, like, as I'm slowly transitioning over to being a creator, there's something where like it's not cool to criticize your peers type of thing.
Yeah.
But there's also the issue of, if you have a channel like this and you want to do live streams, a lot of people are not happy when you because here's the thing, you can either say the books are totally fantastic and this and that, and then people won't believe you if every book is
right.
fantastic. Or you can mention like, I didn't like this part, and even stuff that's objective, like the art doesn't work that well here, or maybe the printing, it's blurry or something. Like that, I know that there's a guy he's a big YouTuber, and he's shown up in my chat a few times. Will not respond to me when I ask him if he wants to come on, because I reviewed his book and I had a couple negative things to say. So if you're one of the people who's doing a show like this, that's one thing you have to consider. And then, since most of us eventually want to make a book, like once you start getting into production mode, it becomes a little sus.
And I think that's the thing is, given how you just said that, which is, I don't disagree. It's that kind of thing where things actually can't, in theory, progress and get better because of that right there.
It's a real problem. Like,
fans don't want to tell you that they don't like your book because they like you, and they don't want to hurt your feelings that you're the favorite content creator, and they're like, hey, you're not as good as Chuck Dixon, Grant Nolan. Sorry, man. And it's like that, and that's gonna happen. But I think it's easier for fans to do that because obviously it's just a person who's going to watch the stuff. It's much more harder to do that when you're obviously talking to someone face to face and that person, you've been on your shows, been on your podcast. I understand that thing too. Like, no one wants to see someone get their stuff trashed on, but I think it's also in a way people need to do it too. I don't think people have to do it my way specifically, but I think the way I've always branded myself is I was like, hey, I might like this. I know this person. I like this person. But hey, that does not mean I'm going to like their product. So I like to establish, hey, out the gate, no issues with the person at all. 100% great person. But that doesn't mean what I'm going to read here is going to actually reflect that. Because it shouldn't. No one makes those disclaimers. No one makes those distinctions. So it's just, it kind of feels like it just comes out of nowhere, where it's like, are you venting your frustration that you don't like this person and their stuff? That could happen too. Someone could be just completely projecting all their issues onto their friend's story because they can't verbally say it to their, to them actually, which is odd.
Yeah. There's a few problems with it, just in terms of receiving criticism. If you look at older people, especially people who went to school for art, there's a process called critiques, where basically your whole class would get together and review on whatever project you've been working for the semester or something.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
Shit out of it. So by the time you would graduate, like if somebody gave you crap for it, it would roll off your back, even though a lot of artists are very sensitive, you would become hardened to it. You have very thick skin. Now that we don't have that anymore, a lot of people are just like, oh, I taught myself to draw, or maybe I learned online or whatever, and they're making books. That's fantastic. And I don't think you need a 4-year education to make books. But one of the benefits was people would rip the shit out of your work, and you would get kind of numb to it, and you would learn how to pick out like, okay, this is actually valid advice, and that's not. And the other thing too is, like, part of it's due to cost and part of it's due to not knowing where to get a good editor. And a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people, especially those who come from more of a literary world where they wrote novels or short stories and stuff. They would hire editors, but they were like copy editors or story editors. The problem is comics are primarily a visual medium.
True.
So
yeah.
you need someone who can analyze the artwork that you're getting back, because I've noticed there's a big problem where if you're not used to dealing with artists, you have to know how to communicate with them in order to ask for certain things of the images that they're making. So, like, there was a comic I reviewed a few years ago where there was like the Superman of this universe, right? He's the big, strong, tough guy. And people were saying that in the dialogue, but Superman, he stands like this, his feet are very wide apart in that Superman stance. He's taking up a lot of physical space. He looks very manly. But this one, the guy is kind of like standing like this, and his legs are kind of close together, and it looked very effeminate. So as I'm reading this book, my mind is going like, oh, well, are they lying to me? Is because they're saying one thing, I'm reading the words for one thing, but visually I'm getting another thing. So
Yeah.
the problem is the things are at each other, and there's no one on the editorial team to sort of go through and be like, hey, this is good.
Yeah, no one wants to be that guy, because I think that's a saying in work too. No one wants to be the boss. No one wants to be that guy, because it's tough being that guy,
Well, and I think the other thing is, if you're not used to working in a primarily visual medium, you're just not looking for those things. Like, you don't know what you don't know. So you don't quite understand how the image is going to impact. Like, you could tell, like, oh, well, this guy's got like 3 fingers instead of 4, or maybe that leg looks a little janky, but it's stuff like that. How to compose it that doesn't necessarily work well. And yet another problem is, if you're coming at it from the writing aspect, are you going to be able to afford a top-notch artist? Probably not. So you're going to be dealing with people who maybe are good. Maybe they have good drafting skills, but they don't have that experience of sequential art and storytelling. So when you combine that with not knowing how to ask for what you want, and no appreciable review process, a lot of stuff can go wrong.
I think another thing that people do in the indie space that's weird is that they keep talking about these stories, and it's so beyond cringe, dude. The fact that people talk about all these stories that they never have read. People ask, how do you know that? They never talk about them. When something is so good, you naturally, just by virtue of your life, you will speak about it. When you're a kid and you first ate a Snickers, you're like, Mom, this tastes great. Oh my God, I want another one. When you watched, probably like when I watched Jaws, when I first watched it, I was like, this is mad. I love this fucking movie. I can't not stop speaking about it. That's how people function, just off your instincts. When you like or you hate, it works with not liking stuff too. When you like something enough, you will talk about it naturally. There is not going to be these underlying factors that people keep thinking that are there that'll stop you from doing it. And this is I got to be that guy, because I was going to be that guy. They haven't read these stories. They've never consumed them because they've never read them. They probably, probably not even back them. That's the problem. There's too many people, like you said. They're just fake. They're not being honest with themselves. If you don't like something, it's better to just like say you don't like it, or don't boast as if you've read something. Because people say like this creative stuff is good. You go to that person's timeline, they've not ever talked about how good this creative stuff is, because they've never even talked about the story. Everyone talks about, oh, the art's great. That's cool. That's awesome. Man, for effort. I'm a sucker for great art. What about that story? So if I'm buying this book, tell me what the story's about. Never do. They never do. I've been around the block a little bit too long to know people's like tales and stuff. Everyone has that tell in poker. You scratch your nose, you look around, stuff like that. People haven't read these stories. They just haven't. No one talks about the stories. Like, it's rare you'll find someone that does it, because of the thing you said earlier. People don't want to step on people's toes. Well, then that person gets a self-inflated sense of ego, because that person is having nonstop people tell them their stuff's really good. So that's the other underlying problem with the space, is just too many people have not read these stories. That's it. People are just lying to each other. They keep jerking each other off, going, oh my God, your stuff's so good. Your stuff's so good. You've not even consumed that person's stuff. They've no talk about it. It's like, hey, campaign's up, funded, fulfilled. Okay, then the next part should be like people get their books and they read them and they tell you about them, right? That part never exists. It's always book comes out, funded, done. You never hear about it again. Oh yeah, I'm glad you fulfilled your book. That's awesome. I really think that's great. What's in the story? Net crickets, literally straight crickets every time, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point too. That talking about like how do you get from issue 1 to issue 2? I see a lot of people
Word of
who
mouth.
do crowdfunders for issue 2 before people get issue 1 in their hands. You know,
right? Yeah.
you should give it like, I don't know, let's say a month. Like whenever you start shipping them out, great. Start your mailing list then. And then like a month or 2 later, that's when you start the crowdfunding, because once people get it, and if they do read it and it was good and they're excited about it, they'll be like, oh yeah, I want to get number 2. But if
They're
you do
doing the same thing the mainstream industry does. Consume, what's the thing? Eat, consume, blah blah blah. You know the saying. They're doing the same thing. It's just in a different way. They're basically doing, hey, yeah, I know no one's consumed that story because I literally just shipped this book out this month, right? Probably like last week. I probably shipped it to you guys. I know you haven't read it. There's no way. It's too short of time frame. Hey, book 2. Hey, yeah, fun. Oh my god, I know these tactics, you know, and it's just by the time you already funded book 2, because you already funded book 1, because you probably like the art, you're not consuming that story. There's no way. There's just absolutely no way people are getting these stories and consuming them, because no one talks about them. And people keep saying things like, oh, but the art is so good. That means nothing, though. That's literally what Image Comics had. Or it's the same thing. You know, bought because of the art and the stories were horrendous. To be fair, back in the day, people said how bad they were and they fixed it somewhat, right? But this doesn't have that. This doesn't have this at all. This has campaign, fund, fulfillment, done. On to the next thing. That's bad. That means you get all these potentially really good or bad stories that never get attention because it's just product coming out so fast here as well that there's not enough time to read and consume it. It's just not. You know, I don't know how you fix that. I don't, because, you know, that requires people actually having heart-to-heart conversation about, hey, are our fans actually reading our stories? But it's easier to boast about sales numbers than stories, actually, because, you know, sales numbers are a lot more applicable and a lot more visually showable, you know?
But even sales numbers, you know, they fudge stuff. Like, if you're talking about the amount that you make from a book, you're selling the book for $25, but you're charging another 10 for shipping. You're going to add that amount in. And then let's say you're selling posters or shirts or hats or something with it too. You're going to say, oh, I have, 50,000 in sales, when, you know, the real number is like closer to 20 when you take out all the swag.
Yeah, that's why I was always really suspect of people when they criticize Eric's price model. You know, Eric had $35. I'm like, you guys are, God, I hate being mean, but you guys are disingenuous pieces of shit. Your books are literally priced at $25, and I backed books on Indiegogo. I have got mine, the ones that I backed. You go to process to check out, $10 shipping is added. It's like the Indiegogo books you buy are $35. Why are we hounding on this guy for charging $35 when you do the exact same thing? I know, because I backed myself. I've seen them prices. Then people will say things like, well, I could just go buy this other $15 book. Well, first of all, you could do it. Why are you telling me that? You could do that right now without you say anything to me. You could do that, but you don't because, well, you know, reasons, right? Because people like to boast about something that they're going to do, but they not end up doing it. I just don't understand that. Like, why are we complaining about prices here? And people keep saying their book's quality. If your book's quality, then you're charging that is fine then. But it's mostly because there's a lot of overhead to get deal with, as you said before, artists, editors. Yeah, there's a lot of it. Yeah.
You know, the thing for me is like, well, if he can charge 35 and people are willing to pay for that, why not? You know,
I know.
Like,
we literally pay like what, double the money we make a year to have a roof over our. People, I don't know. Do you really think your 2-bedroom apartment is worth like $200? Really? Do you think that? No. As humans, we do that. You know, I don't know why in this. I swear, man, this industry, comic industry, indie, whatever, is bizarro world. Everything is bizarro world here. The real world does not function like this at all. They're literally living in bizarre world here, man.
Well, and the too is like, you know, let's say Eric wants to print on gold leaf paper, and he's charging $1,000 a book. Okay, well, if there's people who want to pay $1,000 for a gold leaf book, why not?
It's always the broke people that are talking. It's always the brokest person saying what they don't like about something. It's always that. It's never the people that have money. People that have money go, maybe I buy, maybe I don't. That's it.
And I do think that there is a grain of truth in that to an extent. Not necessarily about Eric, but if there's all these people who can't afford the books, then maybe there really is a big audience for lower cost books. I mean, there's something I call a high-low strategy, right? Like you have a high strategy, which is you're going to have your premium, however many pages. It's going to be on glossy deluxe paper, and it's going to have full color. And in the back, you're going to put sketches and all this kind of stuff. And then why not also sell a stripped down version? Maybe once you get several issues together, you have enough pages to print so you can do like newsprint, or something super cheap where you're selling that to a different audience who couldn't afford your higher end model.
Do you think this could also be another thing in the future that people may bring back, the whole door-to-door salesman thing? Not going literally door-to-door, that might get you shot. Going to like a Home Depot or a Target, ask them to be out there. Don't just do don't be a dick. Sit out there with a table with your extra copies that you crowdfunded. Talk to people and sell it to them. I think that's a really undervalued thing that people could do that I don't see them doing. I told myself I'm going to do it whenever I get a book series done. I'm going to go out and just try to talk to people. Because like, what I've noticed that sometimes when you're on the internet doing these kind of things is that physical interaction means so much to people. Like I remember I went to my Barnes and Nobles last month because I had to get a hard drive for my computer because I had to download some episodes for the podcast to put up. And I went to Barnes and Nobles and I was talking to people about the stuff that we would talk about. There's a lot. I'm in California, so there's a lot of weirdos here.
Oh, yeah.
People actually agreed with me. We knew what we were talking about. We know we were having a conversation with, but just when I went to the comic section and I saw the physical stuff, it did something to my brain. And I was like, it's so much more different in real life compared to talking to someone online, right? And I think that is such an undervalued thing in the indie comic sphere. It's like, why don't people go out and actually talk to people until their book too? How many people you could theoretically sell your book to just talk to them? Potentially. It's all potentially, right? But the point of having that interaction is you get a lifelong customer out of that person. If you can convince them, you have a great conversation with them, you have that guy for life,
Well, also if you go to the right places where there's certain audiences, you'll make money. Like, do you know Comic Book Radio, Peter Cimetti's channel?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I like
so he had a guy on a few weeks ago. I can't remember who it was, but he was saying like he bought some spinner racks and he went to certain businesses in his area to fill it up like you would a vending machine. And then people buy it there. So he tried at some grocery stores. But one place he went was a head shop where people would go and they'd buy weed. And I guess they were really into comics and stuff like that.
Marijuana and comics. I love it.
Why not? I mean, I think if you look at this stuff should sell, right? So if you somehow have the right book and the right audience, I think that you could totally do it. Now, I don't know about a table outside of Home Depot, but I mean, that's basically what you're doing if you go to a comic book show, right? People get a table, they'll sell their comics there. So if you find I don't know, I'd have to give it some thought about where exactly, but like what if you were doing like a Kung Fu book and you found a bunch of like karate schools and a jiu-jitsu school and stuff, could you be like, hey, will you buy X number of copies for me? I'll give you, the dealer discount and you could sell them at your school.
Another thing I think a lot of people could do, I see it in my area sometimes, people will just don't give all your stuff for free. Family, got the little one there, go up to the family, don't be like weird. Like, hey, do you think your kid would like this conversation with them? Maybe at the end of the day, give the kid your book, and they'll be like, hey, read it. Just little things like that. I think the space could do a whole lot better if people just innovated on like certain ideas. It feels like it's just standard, like campaign, fund, it's over, move on. And it's like, well, after a while, that just gets boring. It just does,
Yeah. And the other problem too is there's only so many people who are watching these kind of shows on YouTube. But that doesn't mean that that's the the maximum amount of people who are watching the show. Like, for some reason, people in the comic space only want to go on comic book shows. But like, let's say
Right.
you're doing horror comic, you should go on other shows that are focused on horror. A lot of these people don't read comics anymore because they think there's nothing for them. They think they've grown out of it, and there's just nothing left in the medium. But if you come with some cool new horror book and concept and you go on a show, a lot of these people who like horror movies would be interested, and people who collect toys and stuff like that. And for you, like romance, like I bet you there's a lot of like even relationship channels.
Oh God,
If you
listen
do
to
the right,
White Speak. Oh no.
well, hey, there's something for everyone, right? But
That's true.
like
Yeah.
people shouldn't feel, or like let's say channels that focus on YA with stories that have a little more
Mhm.
romance in it. Why not? People, but for some reason people don't want to venture out of their like this is my
Yeah, it's
lane.
the
I'm gonna
concept
stay
of
here.
well, you bring up into the people got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
that's exactly it.
I
So
think that's kind of what it boils down to is oh, and I know a lot of people have brought this up too, and it's like super cringe too. I don't think any person's character in this space will ever outsell like a Batman or a Superman or Spider-Man. And not because it won't be good. I think
mm,
the issue you gotta understand is like some of these big companies like Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, all these people have many years of experience. These companies have massive, not just employees, like people that do specific things that take a lot of time to do, right? So bigger content creators have like social media managers, editors, all that stuff, because it takes time to do all that stuff. I think what
yeah,
people gotta get out of their minds is your character is most likely not gonna hit on that level. And that's fine. Success is not determined by all that. Okay. That's another warped reality of it too, because a lot of these guys don't understand is that a lot of that predicates on a lot of people consuming movies and television and animated shows for these characters too. A lot of people haven't even really bought a lot of stories based on those characters. So what these
mhm.
guys need to do, in my opinion, I'm just talking from a general consumer point of view. So, stop valuing your success by outliers, because all those characters we mentioned, like Batman, Spider-Man, X-Men, those are outliers, for being honest here. Those are legit outliers. There's many characters in Marvel and DC that are completely just like no one knows or cares about. Not even underrated. They're just no one gives a fuck about them. You
And they're
know?
terrible.
Yeah, they're bad. Yeah, and I think people keep valuing themselves by outliers hinders their growth. When someone tells someone, "Hey, your character doesn't sell as well as Spider-Man," I hope someone's random character does not sell better than. I hope it doesn't. That means Spider-Man must be
Yeah.
absolute garbage then, by that standard. Then
Well, I mean, I think Dogman outsells Spider-Man.
that's sad. Don't tell me that. That's sad.
There's
Oh
now
no.
there is something like a lot of those characters are really like our version of like Hercules,
Right, right.
and Jason and the Argonauts. So they're more than just comic book characters. They become uh part of the our social fabric and our identity, I guess you'd say. Like,
Mhm.
everyone knows if you say, "Oh, my spider sense is tingling," what that means, and things like that. So it's going to be hard to be more popular,
Mhm.
but can some of these independent comics eventually make it into the general public? Yeah, totally. Because if you look at something like Hellboy,
Mhm.
Hellboy was not one of the big two creations. Yeah, Mike Mignola worked for the big two, and yeah, he published. I think most of it was through Dark Horse,
Mhm.
but Dark Horse wasn't doing all that much advertising.
Took a
But
long time for them to get big, actually.
yeah, and there were people in other industries who eventually, um, took notice of him, and then Mignola was able to make money licensing the character, and then all of a sudden, all of his merch took off. People wanted to buy back issues. They wanted to buy collected trade paperbacks. So I think that's another thing too. If you're actually looking to make money in the space, I
Mhm.
think you just need to understand it's going to take a long time, but eventually you could make the money back
Yeah.
because if you have stories, um you once you get several, you can go to a publisher and have them publish it for you, and whatever you get is gravy because you've already made your money back, hopefully, the first time you put it out with that crowdfunder. And it could be that something more like how they do some manga where you'll get like 160 pages, but it's not all one story. It's like maybe they'll have 2 or 3 different stories in it. Well, maybe you can partner up with some 1 or 2 other
Mhm.
people and have, your 22-page issue as part of a larger collection that comes out on a monthly basis. Well, you've already paid for it, so anything they sell is just gravy for you.
I also that I tell people this all the time when they start this stuff. It just takes time, man. With any creative endeavor, whether it's comics and anything, it just takes time. A lot of people watch too many outliers to think that's a normal reality of something. They get a wrong, warped perception of it. And it just tears their mind to the point where it's hard to even get them to understand, hey, whatever big person you're looking at, watching, consuming, whatever stuff they're doing, that is an outlier. That is not a norm, actually.
Mhm.
They're an exception to the rule, right? So, like with YouTube, you'll watch someone that has a lot of subs, but in that kind of genre that they're in, there's a lot of smaller people there in that subsection of genre that don't get the traction, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Could be not that that's bad. It just people don't understand. It just takes time to get things rolling on something. Then when you finally hit that stride, it's worth it because you've been putting in the effort. I think
Yep.
that's the problem too. People keep trying to get this like instant success and gratification where it's like it's just not going to work that way. I'm sorry to tell people, it takes years for this stuff to pop off. All those characters you grew up reading, watching, whatever, that took years to get done. So you better struggle,
Yep.
better sit down, buckle up, because you're in it for the long run. There's gonna be days you don't even want to do this anymore. Same here.
Well, so okay, I've been wondering, you were streaming all the time. Do you have specific shows on specific days? Or how do you
Yes.
usually break yours up?
Okay. So back when I first started doing this stuff, I was so bad at it to the point where I actually got burnt out for the first time I think ever doing this. When I was doing watch parties, then podcasts, then late night watch parties for those MCU shows. So it got to a point where I knew how to space out my energy to a point where I could have shows every day. And also now I have a group of people where I could have shows every day.
Mhm.
Or there's certain days where I have certain people on less because you don't want to burn someone out. So you have
Right.
someone on more than others. So I told myself I'm gonna have a time limit with it as well too. So I have a show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's probably going to be generally, if I have a show Thursday, it could be like one of these potentially, or it could be
Mm.
just one on one with the other guy that I have for league. And Friday we have a show, and Saturday. So the panel shows are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. With the other 2 days being just stuff for like Yu-Gi-Oh and trading card game stuff and League of Legends stuff. Actually, it just comes with just spacing myself out. I was really, really burning myself out, sitting and watching a movie, then doing a 5-hour podcast. Probably not the best use of your time, actually.
Yeah. And man, out of everyone that I've seen online, you have to have the most different social media presences. I was looking, it's like, dang,
The only one
you've
I
got
don't post on is
YouTube,
Threads.
Rumble, Twitch.
Yeah, Linktree. Okay, so what I figured out is Linktrees are an easy way to get people to like sub and follow to anything you're doing because
Mhm.
people are always like, hey, do you have any links? Well, if you have them all in one place, then people,
It's much easier. Yeah.
can go and they can go and see which one they want to go support. I encourage everybody, if you are upcoming anything, content creator, compers, have a link tree. Greatly beneficial, right? Takes time to add stuff there to like growing a platform, but it just takes time. The podcast, so on podcasting platforms, the one that those are on. The Nightwing podcast was not my first podcast, but it was the one that stuck with me the longest because of how I got better at doing everything. That one is now debunked because I lost my YouTube channel where it was based around. So I'd start over because it would be in place. So the Iron Man podcast, so the Cloud9 podcast is there. That's all based around League. That's there. The first 9 seasons. I'm going to upload season 10 when the Iron Man podcast episodes are done. So when the Iron Man
Mhm.
podcast episodes are all done, then I'll upload all the episodes of Cloud9 podcast season 10. And then after that, I'll start putting out the Iron Man podcast episodes that are new with the other show. So a lot of people love listening to the show audio-wise. That's another thing in the indie comic space that I wanted to bring up earlier. I'm glad you brought it
Mhm.
up with this, which is people consume podcasts a lot. So if someone has a show, I would highly recommend, if you want to reach a wider audience that is nothing for you to do other than just putting the same content you recorded out on Spotify, put it on podcasting platforms. You don't have to do as many as I do. Just do like the popular ones like Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, Apple people have Apple Podcasts. You know, big Apple Podcast is really, really big,
Yeah.
actually. Many people you could reach just with your podcast. Many people. I know a lot of people don't do it. I just love uploading episodes so people can watch them. Actually, I'm probably gonna end up taking down Threads. Actually, because I don't really ever use it that much. I might post on it, maybe, but it's one of those platforms where Mr. Beast, he's an outlier. He's an outlier. He wasn't everywhere to get big. So I thought to myself, you know what? I might not want to be in this place, but if it gets me people on my on eyes on my stuff, it's worth in my opinion. And one I might not do is TikTok, actually, because that is so cringe. I hate TikTok so much.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been doing so I do a lot of like gaming videos. And so I'll try to do like one a week, and the video will be somewhere like 6 to 10 minutes. And then I'll break it up and then do the YouTube shorts, which has greatly increased my views. And it's been pretty good for subs as well. But I was thinking like, I could just save these, and one of these days I'm just going to put it all on TikTok and see what happens.
Also, that's just kind of what you have to do in this space. Is you just have to kind of just get in more than one place. I know some people don't like those other platforms, but if you can get people that'll look at your stuff, I see it as so valuable, honestly. Like, even when I do stuff like this, when I can, if I get a person that'll sub, one person, two people, that's worth to me. An hour, gain 2 new subs that I didn't have access to before, sounds worth to me. I think, people got to try to get more ways of getting out there. The only thing I'm truly bad at doing is building groups. I am terrible at building groups. People build a group and they get so many people in there, their comments, they interact. It's like, how do you do that? I can't do it, man. I cannot create people to do it. I'm just so bad at it, actually.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like you try to do a Facebook group and you're like, man, I am so bad at keeping up with things and being an admin and stuff. It's just, so I'd rather just join other people's like Discord and stuff like that. But I do have to change out some links. I gotta make sure it's not showing like the Nightwing podcast. That show's been ended a while ago. But yeah, it's got to just update my links and certain things. The links work. It's just like update on the logos in there. But all the podcast video coming out detailing all the days and that, it's just there's not enough hours in the day. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, that is the one thing if you want to be a one-man band and be in the space, and it's in like Mobius was saying earlier, it's kind of annoying when creators will come out to promote the book and then they'll disappear for a while and then maybe you see them for the next one. The part of the problem is like you've got time, you actually have to make the thing, and then you're doing this kind of stuff behind the scenes all the time too. Yeah. So it's like there's only so many hours in a day. Like I wish I had staff, to go do all this other junk for me. But
like if people don't see me, it's either because either I'm working or I went to the gym or I do pre-recorded content too. Like that last video I just put up there, I actually recorded that Friday last week, and I just put that out now because I have so much other stuff. So usually for me, I've kind of mastered it at a certain point. I'll actually record 3 videos sometimes in a day or 2 in a day and space and upload them throughout the week sometimes, because there's just not enough time for me to just sit down and go, okay, I'm doing a video now. Now I just got to put it out. Or sometimes I'll wake up in the morning because I notice my energy levels work better in the morning than they do later in the day. So I'll wake up in the morning. I'll be like, okay, well, what topic can I go off about for about 10 minutes? Oh my God, Madam Web. Oh, sign me up. Go over 10 minutes about it, put it up. It's just really hard, man, because I don't know if I know you said you're married, but your wife, she probably isn't going to be helping you with this social media. She's not going to be doing that, Like Definitely. You'll probably have like your families that'll be like, oh, I'll subscribe, and the family's the worst to do it. Family will sub and never watch your stuff ever. Family's
no. I know. My family doesn't know I do this, other than my wife.
I tried, man. It's bad. Any upcoming content creators, please, I implore you. Maybe it's just my experience. When your family subs, don't get discouraged when they're not watching. Family do that thing where, I'll support you, but that's it. A sub is all you're getting. You'd be lucky if they future shit.
Yeah.
Just saying.
It's like maybe you'll get a pity buy when you sell something.
Sub. If you just sub, I'll take it. Yeah, give and take. It's just, there's a lot that goes on for this stuff. I've just kind of mastered it throughout the years. Also, the best thing to do as a content creator is learn how to speak on a video. A lot of people
Yeah.
just don't do that very well. And I think that's what hinders them too. Not even thumbnail. Sometimes thumbnails look really, really good. You watch the video and it's like, dude, I don't understand what the hell you were saying because you were talking in 3 different ways. They'll talk about one thing, cut themselves off, go to another point, cut themselves off, go to another point. Then it's like, do you remember what you were first saying what this video is about? Oh, no.
I've definitely done that before. But you kind of have to be easy on yourself when you start too, because you're never going to be good at anything when you just start doing it. Like
True.
unless you've had some experience, like maybe you were a teacher or maybe you've done this for another industry. But most people, when they start their channel, it's going to suck pretty bad.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, as you do it, you're going to get more comfortable being on a camera, being by a microphone, talking with other people. Like I'm sure you and I know I'm getting a lot better at it. Like you don't necessarily have a certain topic that you want to talk to someone about, but you can just sort of like pick up on stuff now and run with it and like get them to talk about this or that. It's like, it's a skill you got to develop.
Yeah, I also think that people need to understand if you're doing something like that, people consume your stuff through audio, right? Most
Yeah.
people that watch this stuff watch it, listen to it.
Yep.
Because everyone was like, I want to have the best camera. And it's like, no. You need to have the best microphone. Before, you could probably get away with having the best camera based off how YouTube used to work, how things were before. You need to have anything. Microphone, best audio first over anything, Because if someone can't hear you probably because your mic is a potato, that might be the reason why you don't got any subs, because they can't hear you. You're talking like Mr. Krabs, actually,
Yeah. That's funny because I've noticed like a lot of people at the gym, they're like doing their thing and I see them, they've got a YouTube video playing, but they're not actually watching it. They're just listening to it while they're on the
Same
treadmill.
thing, actually. Yeah.
People in the car, they're not watching the YouTube video, but they're listening to it.
Mm-hmm. Like same way when you have a family drive in a car or whatever, but on Spotify, you just listen. That's it. Kids are probably on like iPads, whatever have kids now have nowadays. It's just how people consume their media now. And that's the thing is people don't really know how to adapt very well. Like YouTube now is all based around having a good thumbnail and watch time. Because how long someone actually watched the video promotes it in the algorithm. Everyone keeps thinking like it's about views. And it's like, yes, views matter. But if someone's not actually watching the video, it means nothing.
Yeah.
So you could have, how people new start and they have like 30 views. I'll take 30 views and someone watching that video for like 7 minutes than someone having 30, like 1,000 views and they watch like 30 seconds. That matters way more, honestly.
Yeah.
Because the thing though, if someone's watching your videos and they've only watched like 30 seconds, you suck. You're just absolute trash at that point. If someone's watching your videos and they're watching for like 10 minutes, that's really good. You kept the person's attention. I've had to learn it throughout the years. How do you keep people's attention? Because everyone's really hard to do it with. Everyone's attention span is different. You say their favorite movie sucks, oh, they're clicking off. They're like, oh, I think Jaws is overrated. Nope, I'm clicking off. That's how people function these days.
That's true. Well, kept you on quite a while. So I've got the link tree in the description to the video. We've got the Rumble link pinned to the top of the comments here. So everyone go check it out. Go check out the Iron Man podcast, Master Swag King. Thanks for stopping by tonight. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. For everyone that doesn't know, the reason why the Iron Man podcast is on Rumble, Twitch, and X, give or take how long that'll be whenever it's monetized, is because it's too, as you've heard in those shows, it's a little too spicy for YouTube. They would not like that show. But the Cloud9 podcast, which is all based on League of Legends, they're not going to care about that. You talk about esports, YouTube don't give a rats flying furry behind about esports stuff. So, and plus, I don't want to have to go through like restarting again. I told myself this is the last time I'm doing this. I'm starting at episode 1 with this show last year. I'm never restarting over. This is where I'm at, And someone and I know I'm gonna get this eventually. Someone ever replays this and watches that. What if Marvel sends you a letter saying you use Iron Man? Well, I hate to break it to people. Marvel and DC have trademarked the name superhero. So if you have an indie comic book where it uses a superhero, I'm pretty sure they probably go after you first more than me. We know they don't because that's just not. It's too much money to go after everyone like that, and plus, no one cares. It's like. It's not that big a deal. I know I had that controversy a while ago. It's like, man, you're about to get sued by Marvel. You're using their character in your thumbnail. I'll make money off this stuff. What? I just have Iron Man in the name because I just think he's a cool character. You know, that's it.
But I mean, also it could be, you could say, oh, well, I'm talking about triathlons. I'm talking about, Iron Man. Iron Man was named Iron Man because, like, there's previous use to the term Iron Man. It's like somebody
Yeah,
who's really
yeah.
strong. So we're all good.
You know, that thing is, let's have you on, Tuesday or whenever day you're free. I don't know what day you're free, but whenever day you want to come on and we'll talk. You're always
Sure.
welcome
Sounds
to come on,
good.
man. Yeah,
Thanks. Appreciate it.
a very good show.
All right. And for anyone else, my D&D 5e campaign, Empire of the Undying Sun, still coming. Some technical problems with the website, but we'll have an announcement hopefully in a week or so. So good night, everyone.
See you guys later. Goodbye. Like, subscribe, and comment, as they say.
Definitely. Be the